Dr. Yuna pressed her thin fingers against the glass window of the research station. Far below, the gas giant Kepler 442b spun slowly, its blue and purple clouds swirling in endless patterns. She had been studying this beautiful planet for 3 years now. The Villani people were peaceful scientists who loved learning about new worlds and the strange life forms that lived on them. The research station was a work of art. Its crystal towers reached out like flowers toward the stars. Inside, dozens of Villani scientists worked quietly in their labs. They had 6 arms each and moved with gentle grace. Their large black eyes could see things that other species missed. They never fought wars or hurt anyone. Violence was something they did not understand. Yuna turned away from the window and walked back to her lab. Her assistant, a young Villani named Tay, was looking at samples from the planet below. The methane-based life forms were unlike anything in the galaxy. They could teach the scientific community so much about how life could exist in impossible places. "Doctor, look at this," Tay said, his voice soft and musical like all Villani voices. "The organisms can change their structure when the gas pressure changes." "It is amazing!" Yuna smiled and moved closer to the microscope. This was why she loved her work. Every day brought new discoveries. The Villani had built this station far from the major space lanes because they wanted peace and quiet for their research. No one bothered them out here in the empty space between star systems. That was about to change. The first warning came from the sensor station. Bach, who monitored space around the station, saw the ships appear on his screens. Large ships. Military ships. They came out of hyperspace like sharks smelling blood in the water. "Commander Juan to all stations." The voice echoed through the crystal hallways. "Unknown vessels approaching. All non-essential personnel to evacuation positions." Yuna felt her stomach drop. The Villani had no weapons on their station. They never needed them before. Who would want to hurt peaceful scientists? Commander Juan stood in the control center, his forearms moving quickly over the control panels. He was older than most Villani, with gray patches on his pale skin. He had seen more of the galaxy than others, and knew that not all species were as peaceful as his own people. "Open communication channels," Juan ordered. The main screen showed the approaching ships. They were huge, dark vessels covered in armor and weapons. Yuna recognized the design from her studies of galactic military forces. These were Krovar ships. The Krovar were reptilian beings who conquered other species and took their worlds. They had destroyed 12 star systems already. "This is Krovar War Master Vex," a harsh voice filled the control room. The screen showed a large reptilian face with yellow eyes and sharp teeth. "You will surrender your research and submit to Krovar rule. You have 10 minutes to decide." Commander Juan stepped forward. His voice remained calm and gentle. "This is a peaceful research station. We have no weapons and pose no threat to anyone. We study plant life and small organisms. Surely there has been some mistake." War Master Vex laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Your biotechnology research will serve the Krovar Empire. Your scientist will work for us now. Resistance will result in the destruction of your station." "We cannot give you our research," Juan replied. "It belongs to all species in the galaxy. It is meant to help everyone understand life better." "Then you have chosen death," Vex said. The communication ended. Yuna ran to the evacuation stations with the other scientists. The crystal hallways filled with frightened Villani grabbing important research data and personal items. Evacuation pods were small ships that could carry a few people away from the station. but there were not enough pods for everyone. The first plasma blast hit the station's outer ring. The beautiful crystal towers shattered like glass. Yuna was thrown to the floor as the station shook. Emergency lights flashed red and alarms screamed. "Through the corridors, all civilians to the pods now," Commander Juan's voice called out. "Military personnel, prepare for boarding action." Yuna helped load research data into the evacuation pods. Tay was crying as he watched their work of years being destroyed. Other scientists tried to save what they could, but there was no time. The Krovar ships were firing constantly now, tearing apart the station piece by piece. In the communications center, Officer Day made a choice that would change everything. While the commander and other officers tried to organize the evacuation, Day sent out a distress signal on all frequencies. Most species would ignore it or debate what to do for weeks. But Day sent it anyway. "Unknown vessels attacking peaceful research station," he transmitted into space. "Coordinates attached. Any assistance appreciated." The signal traveled through hyperspace communication relays. It reached the major civilized worlds, where government officials would hold meetings and discuss proper diplomatic responses. It reached the Galactic Council, where representatives would argue about jurisdiction and proper procedures, and it reached a small monitoring station on a blue world called Earth. Lieutenant Sue was drinking coffee when the signal came in. She had been listening to space communications for 2 years and had never heard anything like this. Real aliens asking for help. She nearly dropped her coffee cup. "Sir, you need to see this," she called to her supervisor. Within minutes, the signal was being analyzed by the best military minds on Earth. Within an hour, it reached the desk of Admiral Kang. The Admiral was a serious man who had spent his life preparing for humanity's eventual contact with alien species. He had not expected it to come as a cry for help. "How long to reach their position?" he asked his staff. 72 hours at maximum burn, sir," replied his aide. Admiral Kang looked at the tactical display showing Earth's military forces. Humanity had only been in space for a few decades. Their ships were crude compared to what other species probably had. But they were fast, and they were tough. "Launch the fleet," Admiral Kang ordered. "All available ships. These people asked for help, and by God, they're going to get it." Back at the research station, Yuna's evacuation pod launched just as Krovar soldiers broke through the main airlock. She watched through the small window as her beautiful home was overrun by armed reptiles. Many of her friends were still inside. Commander Juan had stayed behind to help coordinate the evacuation. The pod drifted away from the dying station. Around her, other pods carried the survivors toward uncertain safety. The Krovar ships ignored them for now, focused on taking the station intact. Yuna did not know that far away. An entire species was mobilizing to help people they had never met. She did not know that ships were already burning through hyperspace toward her location. All she knew was that her peaceful world had been destroyed by creatures who took what they wanted by force. But help was coming. Help from a species that understood violence all too well and had decided to use it for something good. Captain Wu stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Soul's Fury and watched Earth grow smaller behind them. His ship was leading 12 other vessels through hyperspace toward a place none of them had ever been. They were going to help aliens. They had never fight enemies they knew nothing about. The human fleet moved faster than anyone thought possible. Other species in the galaxy took weeks or months to plan military operations. They held meetings and debates and formed committees. Humans just loaded their ships with weapons and left. Admiral Kang had made his decision in less than an hour. Every available ship in the Earth Defense Fleet was now racing toward the Kepler system. Destroyers, cruisers, frigates, and support vessels all burned their engines at maximum power. The crews pushed themselves and their machines to the limit. "Engineering, what's our status?" Captain Wu asked. "Engines at 110%, sir," came the reply. "We're pushing it, but she'll hold together." Wu nodded. "The Souls." Fury was built in the orbital shipyards above Earth 5 years ago. She was designed to fight in the asteroid fields of the Sol system, where pirates and raiders tried to attack human colonies. Her armor was thick and her weapons were simple, but effective. Most importantly, her crew knew how to fight. In the ship's briefing room, Wu gathered his officers. They studied what little information they had about the Krovar. The aliens were reptilian, aggressive, and had conquered many worlds. Their ships were large and heavily armed. On paper, they should easily defeat the human fleet. "Sir, we're outnumbered." "And outgunned," said Commander Park, his weapons officer. "Intelligence says they have ships twice the size of ours." "Then we'll have to be twice as smart," Wu replied. "What do we know about their tactics?" "They prefer long-range combat," answered Lieutenant Nam. "They use their superior firepower to destroy enemies from a safe distance. Very civilized approach to warfare." Captain Wu smiled grimly. "Good. They won't expect what we're planning to do." Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening on every ship. Human military doctrine was different from what other species used. Humans had learned to fight on a world where everything tried to kill them. They were used to being outnumbered and outgunned. They specialized in doing the impossible. 3 hours into their journey, the fleet encountered refugee ships fleeing from Krovar space. Captain Jin, commanding the destroyer Incheon's Wrath, ordered his ship to intercept them. The refugees were from different species, all running from the advancing Krovar forces. "This is Captain Jin of the Earth Defense Fleet," he transmitted to the refugee ships. "Do you need assistance?" The response came from a ship carrying wounded Altarian civilians. The Altarians were bird-like creatures with hollow bones and delicate features. Several had been injured when their world was attacked. "You are from Earth?" the Altarian captain asked. "We have heard stories. Your people are called Deathworlders." Captain Jin frowned. "Deathworlders? Your planet is classified as a class, 12 Death World," the alien explained. "Only the most dangerous species can survive there. The galaxy fears you." Jin looked around his bridge at his crew. They seemed like normal people to him. "We're just here to help." The Altarian made a sound. That might have been laughter. "The Krovar think they are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They have never met humans before." Captain Jin ordered his medical team to help the wounded refugees. As the human doctors worked alongside alien civilians, they learned more about what humanity was facing. The Krovar had been expanding their empire for 50 years. They conquered peaceful species and enslaved survivors. No one had ever successfully fought them off. "What about your military?" asked Dr. Lee, treating a young Altarian's broken wing. "We tried to resist," the alien replied sadly. "Our ships are fast and our pilots are skilled, but the Krovar ships are too strong. We could not hurt them." Dr. Lee nodded and continued his work. He did not tell the alien that human ships carried nuclear weapons. Most galactic species thought nuclear weapons were too dangerous to use in space. Humans disagreed. Back on Sol's Fury, Captain Wu received reports from across the fleet. The refugee encounters had given them valuable intelligence about Krovar tactics and ship designs. The aliens were confident in their superiority. They had won every battle they fought for decades. Admiral Kang wants to speak with the fleet, announced Communications Officer Hyun. The main screen showed Admiral Kang's face. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship was busy with activity. Officers moved quickly between stations, preparing for battle. "Captains, we will reach the Kepler system in 18 hours, Kang announced. "Intelligence suggests we face a superior force with better technology. The Krovar expect an easy victory." The Admiral paused and looked directly at the camera. "They don't know humans. They don't know that we evolved fighting predators that could tear us apart. They don't know that we consider a fair fight to be one where both sides have an equal chance of dying." Murmurs of agreement came from across the fleet communication network. These were soldiers who had fought in the vacuum of space and the crushing gravity of gas giant moons. They had learned warfare in places that would kill most alien species. "We're going to show them what Deathworlders can do," Admiral Kang continued. "Not for conquest or glory, but for people who cannot defend themselves. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when Earth goes to war." The transmission ended, and the fleet continued its race through hyperspace. In the weapon bays, crews checked missiles and prepared ammunition. In engineering, technicians pushed the fusion reactors to their limits. In the medical bays, doctors prepared for casualties. Lieutenant Su, the communications officer who had first received the alien distress call, monitored radio frequencies from the Kepler system. The signals were getting weaker. The research station was being systematically destroyed. Every hour they delayed meant more innocent people would die. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the station," she reported. The voice was weak and filled with static, but the words were clear. "Unknown allies, if you received our signal, we are grateful. Do not sacrifice yourselves for us." Captain Wu felt anger building in his chest. The aliens were telling them not to come. They thought humanity would abandon them like everyone else had. They did not understand that humans did not leave people behind. "Increase speed to 120%, he ordered. "Sir, that's beyond safe operating parameters," his engineering officer warned. "Do it anyway," Wu replied. "Those people are counting on us." Across the fleet, engines burned brighter as human ships pushed past their design limits. They were still 18 hours away from the battle, but every minute counted. The Krovar had controlled space through fear and superior firepower for too long. That was about to end. In the refugee ships following behind the human fleet, aliens watched in amazement. No species had ever responded to a distress call this quickly. No military force had ever shown such determination to help strangers. The stories about Deathworlders were apparently true. Humans were dangerous, but they were dangerous to the right people. The countdown to battle continued as the Soul's Fury and her escorts raced through the void. Behind them, Earth's orbital defense platforms tracked their progress. Ahead of them, an enemy waited who had never lost a battle. The Krovar were about to discover why Earth was classified as a death world. War Master Vex stood in the command center of his flagship and watched his forces complete their conquest of the research station. The Villani had been even easier to defeat than he expected. Their beautiful crystal towers were now broken ruins, floating in space. His soldiers were inside the station, collecting the biotechnology research that would make the Krovar Empire even stronger. The reptilian commander was pleased with the operation. In 3 days, his forces had captured another star system with minimal losses. The Villani survivors would be taken back to Krovar space as slaves. Their scientific knowledge would serve the Empire. It was the natural order of things. The strong took from the weak. "War Master, "We have unknown contacts entering the system," reported his sensor officer. Vex looked at the tactical display. 12 small ships had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They were primitive-looking vessels with simple designs. Probably another weak species coming to make a hopeless rescue attempt. "What can you tell me about them?" Vex asked. "The ships use fusion drives and basic armor plating," the sensor officer replied. "No energy shields detected. Weapon systems appear to be projectile-based. Very primitive technology." Vex laughed, showing his sharp teeth. "Another species wants to play hero. Send the destroyer Claw of Victory to deal with them. Make it quick and messy. I want other systems to see what happens to those who interfere with Krovar operations." The destroyer broke away from the main fleet and moved toward the human ships. Captain Zek, commanding the Claw of Victory, was confident this would be an easy kill. His ship was twice the size of the largest human vessel and carried weapons that could destroy a city. Meanwhile, Captain Lee stood on the bridge of the frigate, Bosun's Edge, and watched the Krovar destroyer approach. His ship was the smallest in the human fleet, but Lee was not worried. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and survived battles that would terrify most people. "Sir, enemy destroyer moving to intercept," reported his tactical officer. "Range?" Lee asked. 50,000 kilometers and closing. They're maintaining standard engagement distance." Lee smiled. Standard engagement distance was for civilized species who fought polite wars. Humans had learned warfare from nature, where there were no rules except survival. "All ships, this is Bosun's Edge," Lee transmitted to the fleet. "Beginning attack run." Admiral Kang's voice came over the communication system from his flagship. "Lee, what are you doing? Fall back to the fleet." "Sorry, sir. Can't hear you," Lee replied, cutting the communication. "Must be interference." Captain Lee ordered his ship to full speed directly at the Krovar destroyer. His crew strapped themselves in as the frigate accelerated past safe limits. The fusion drive screamed as it pushed the ship faster than it was designed to go. On the Krovar destroyer, Captain Zek watched in confusion as the tiny human ship charged straight at him. No sane captain would attempt such a maneuver. It was. "Suicide! Open fire!" Zek ordered. "Destroy them before they get closer." Plasma beams reached out toward Bosun's Edge, but the human ship was moving too fast and changing direction too quickly. Captain Lee flew his frigate like a fighter, diving and spinning through space in ways that should have torn the ship apart. 5,000 kilometers, reported Lee's navigator. "Launch everything," Lee ordered. Bosun's Edge unleashed every weapon she carried at point-blank range. Nuclear torpedoes and kinetic projectiles hammered into the Krovar destroyer's hull. The alien ship's shields flickered and failed under the savage assault. At the last second, Lee pulled his ship into an impossible turn that put incredible stress on the hull and crew. Several humans were knocked unconscious by the acceleration, but Bosun's Edge survived. The Krovar destroyer did not. The alien warship broke apart in a chain of explosions that lit up space like a small star. Debris scattered in all directions as the destroyer's reactor went critical. In 4 minutes, a ship that had conquered dozens of worlds was reduced to glowing metal fragments. On his flagship, War Master Vex stared at his tactical display in shock. The destroyer was simply gone. One small, primitive ship had destroyed a vessel 10 times its size. It was impossible. "What species are these creatures?" he demanded. "According to our database, they call themselves humans," his intelligence officer replied. "They come from a planet called Earth. It's classified as a Class 12 death world." Vex felt cold fear creep up his spine. Death worlds were legendary in galactic civilization. Planets so dangerous that only the most savage predators could evolve there. Most species avoided Deathworld inhabitants completely. "Sir, the human fleet is deploying in attack formation," his tactical officer reported. Vex looked at the display and felt his fear grow worse. The human ships were not maintaining safe distances from each other or from the gas giant's gravity well. They were flying in a tight formation that would be suicide for any other species. The gravitational forces alone should tear their ships apart. A new voice came over the communication system. It was calm and professional, but there was steel underneath the words. "This is Admiral Kang of the United Earth Defense Fleet. You have attacked civilians under our protection. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." War Master Vex straightened his shoulders and put on his most intimidating expression. He had conquered 12 star systems. He would not be threatened by primitive Deathworlders. "I am War Master, Vex of the Krovar Empire," he replied. "You are outnumbered and outgunned. Your primitive ships cannot match Krovar military might. Retreat now, or be destroyed." There was a long pause before Admiral Kang responded. When he spoke, his voice was filled with something that chilled Vex to his bones. It was not anger or fear. It was disappointment. "You chose wrong," Kang said simply. The human fleet charged. Vex had fought hundreds of battles against dozens of species. He had seen brave last stands and desperate attacks, but he had never seen anything like what the humans did next. Instead of maintaining proper formation and engaging at maximum range like civilized species, the human ships scattered like a pack of hunting animals. They used the gas giant's gravity to slingshot themselves into impossible positions. They flew through radiation fields that should have killed their crews. "All ships engage the enemy," Vex ordered. "Show these Deathworlders what happens when they challenge the Krovar Empire." The battle began in earnest as Krovar and human ships opened fire. But this was not the kind of orderly engagement Vex was used to. The humans fought like wild animals, using every dirty trick they could think of. Captain Nam led a squadron of fighters directly through the gas giant's radiation belt. The move should have been suicide, but the human pilots had trained in conditions that would kill most species. They emerged behind the Krovar lines and began attacking the alien ships from unexpected angles. The Krovar found themselves fighting an enemy that broke every rule of civilized warfare. These Deathworlders did not care about honor or proper tactics. They cared about winning, and they were very good at it. As the battle raged, Vex realized he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not just primitive barbarians with crude weapons. They were apex predators who had learned to hunt in the most dangerous environment imaginable, and now they were hunting him. The Battle of Kepler 442b became a lesson in why the galaxy feared Deathworld species. What should have been a simple victory for the Krovar Empire turned into their worst nightmare as human tactics shattered every rule of civilized warfare. Captain Nam led her fighter squadron through the gas giant's radiation belt, a maneuver that the Krovar computers said was impossible. The alien tactical systems could not understand why the human pilots were not dead. Any normal species would have been killed by the radiation levels, but humans had evolved under a sun that regularly tried to cook them with solar flares. "Dragon Squadron, form up on me," Nam transmitted to her pilots. "We're going in hard and fast." The human fighters emerged from the radiation like ghosts, their ships crackling with electrical discharge but still functional. The Krovar point. Defense systems were not even looking in their direction. Who would be stupid enough to fly through a radiation belt? Nam's pilots opened fire at close range, their weapons tearing into the unprotected rear sections of Krovar ships. the alien. Vessels had thick armor on the front and sides, but their engines were vulnerable. Human missiles found their targets and explosions began to chain through the enemy fleet. On the research station, Dr. Yuna and the surviving Villani scientists watched the battle through the broken windows of their emergency shelter. The gentle creatures had never seen warfare before, and the violence horrified them. But they were also amazed by what the humans were doing. "They fight like wild animals," whispered Tay, pressing his 6 arms against the crystal wall. "No," Yuna replied, studying the tactical patterns. "They fight like hunters. See how they coordinate their attacks? This is not random violence. This is planned chaos." The humans used the gas giant's gravity in ways that made no sense to Krovar tactical doctrine. Human ships would dive deep into the gravity well, using the massive planet to accelerate to incredible speeds before launching themselves at enemy targets. The Krovar ships could not match these maneuvers because their crews would be crushed by the gravitational forces. War Master Vex watched his carefully planned battle formation fall apart as human ships appeared where they should not be able to survive. His weapons officers were firing at targets that moved in impossible patterns. His sensor operators were reporting contacts in locations that should be deadly to any living crew. "How are they surviving those accelerations?" Vex demanded. "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied. "Our computers estimate that the gravitational forces should liquefy their internal organs." Vex snarled in frustration. These Deathworlders were making a mockery of everything he understood about space combat, but he still had more ships and heavier weapons. Numbers would win this battle. That was when Major Hyun's Marines began their assault on the research station. The Krovar soldiers inside the station thought they were safe. The humans could not board them without ships, and all the human ships were busy fighting the fleet. They continued collecting Villani research data and rounding up survivors for transport to the slave markets. They did not know that humans had launched boarding pods during the chaos of the first attack. Small, barely detectable capsules that drifted through space like debris until they reached their targets. Major Hyun's pod crashed through the station's hull near the main laboratory section. Her Marines poured out in full combat armor, carrying weapons designed for close-quarters fighting. The Krovar soldiers inside were completely unprepared. "Secure the civilians first," Hyun ordered her troops. "Then we clean house." The fighting inside the station was brutal and personal. Krovar soldiers were larger and stronger than humans, but they had never fought in zero gravity with artificial atmosphere. Human Marines had trained for exactly these conditions. They moved through the broken station like three-dimensional dancers, using walls and ceilings as cover. The Krovar discovered why Earth's apex predators had hunted creatures 10 times their size to extinction. Humans were persistence hunters who never gave up once they locked onto prey. Every corridor became a killing ground where human cunning and determination overcame alien strength. Dr. Yuna watched in amazement as human soldiers moved through the station, rescuing Villani scientists and eliminating Krovar forces. The humans were smaller than the reptilian invaders, but they fought with a coordination and ferocity that was terrifying to watch. "Are all Deathworld species like this?" she asked Major Hyun when the Marine paused to check on the Villani survivors. "I don't know," Hyun replied, reloading her weapon. "We're the only Deathworlders I've ever met." Outside, the space battle continued to rage. Admiral Kang watched the tactical display from his flagship and smiled grimly. The Krovar were learning what happened when predators decided to protect instead of hunt. Captain Park commanded the cruiser Daigu's honor, and his ship had taken heavy damage from Krovar plasma cannons. His weapons were offline, and his armor was breached in a dozen places. By any reasonable standard, he should withdraw from the battle. Park was not a reasonable man. "Engineering, how much power do we have left?" he asked. "Enough for one more maneuver, sir," came the reply. "But if we push the engines any harder, the reactor will go critical." Park looked at the tactical display. The Krovar flagship was directly ahead, its massive bulk bristling with weapons. If he could take out their command ship, the rest of their fleet would lose coordination. "All hands, this is the captain," Park announced over the ship's communication system. "We're going to ram the enemy flagship. It has been an honor serving with you all." Park ordered full power to the engines and aimed his crippled ship directly at the Krovar command vessel. Daigu's honor accelerated toward the enemy, her hull glowing white-hot from the strain. "Tell the galaxy that Earth remembers its friends," Park transmitted as his ship tore through the Krovar flagship's hangar bay. The explosion lit up space like a second sun. The massive Krovar command ship broke in half as Daigu's honor's reactor went critical inside its hull. Secondary explosions chained through the alien vessel as ammunition and fuel stores detonated. War Master Vex died with his ship, never understanding how primitive Deathworlders had defeated his superior forces. His last thought was wondering how creatures so violent could care so much about protecting others. The destruction of the flagship broke Krovar morale completely. The surviving alien ships began to retreat, their crews unable to process what they had witnessed. A superior fleet had been destroyed by inferior numbers using tactics that should not work. Admiral Kang watched the enemy retreat and opened communication channels to the entire system. His voice carried to every ship, every station, every listening. "Post in the area. This is Admiral Kang of the United Earth Defense Fleet. The Krovar attack has been repelled. Any civilian vessels requiring assistance should signal immediately. Medical teams are standing by." On the research station, Dr. Yuna felt tears in her large black eyes. She had thought her people were doomed when the Krovar arrived. The galaxy had abandoned them to their fate like it always did when peaceful species were attacked. But the humans had come. The Deathworlders had traveled across space to fight for people they had never met. They had lost ships and lives to protect Vellani scientists who could offer them nothing in return. Major Hyun approached the group of rescued scientists. Her armor was scorched and damaged from the fighting, but she moved with the calm confidence of a professional soldier. "Dr. Yuna, we need to get you and your people to safety," she said. "Our medical teams can treat the wounded, and our ships can take you wherever you need to go." Yuna looked at this human warrior who had risked everything to save strangers. "Why did you come? Why did your people fight for us?" Major Hyun removed her helmet, revealing a young face marked by determination and compassion. "Because you asked for help, and humans don't leave people behind." As rescue operations began throughout the system, the galaxy started to understand that something fundamental had changed. The age of the strong preying on the weak was ending. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they were on the side of the innocent. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler 442b, the galaxy was a different place. News of humanity's victory had spread through every communication network and reached every civilized world. The story seemed impossible, but the evidence was clear. A small fleet of primitive ships had destroyed a Krovar battle group and saved an entire species from extinction. Dr. Yuna stood in the new laboratory that humans had built for her people. It was not as beautiful as the old Crystal Station, but it was functional and safe. More importantly, it was protected by the orbital defense platforms that Earth had installed throughout the system. She was working alongside human scientists, now sharing Volani biotechnology research with people who had risked everything to save her. The humans were eager to learn and quick to understand complex concepts. They were also surprisingly gentle for a species that fought so effectively. "Doctor, look at this," said Dr. Min, a human xenobiologist who had become Yuna's research partner. "If we combine your biosynthesis techniques with our manufacturing processes, we could create medical treatments that would help dozens of species." Yuna examined the data on the shared computer screen. Working with humans had taught her new ways to think about scientific problems. Their minds worked differently than Volani minds, approaching challenges from unexpected angles. "This could save millions of lives," she said softly. "Your people truly fight for life in all its forms." Meanwhile, Admiral Kang stood on the bridge of his new flagship, Soul's Promise, monitoring communication channels from across the galaxy. The ship was anchored at the center of humanity's first permanent deep space naval base. The Kepler Defense Station was both a symbol and a warning to anyone who might threaten peaceful species. "Admiral, we're receiving a distress signal from the Tau Ceti system," reported Lieutenant Su, who had been promoted after her role in detecting the original Volani call for help. Kang studied the tactical display. Tau Ceti was 3 days away, at maximum burn. The signal reported slaver raids against mineral colonies populated by a species called the Zephyrians. "Launch the Third Fleet," Kang ordered. "Captain Wu will command. Standard protection protocol." Within hours, human ships were burning through hyperspace toward another crisis. The galaxy was learning that when someone sent a distress signal, the humans would come, not in weeks or months after diplomatic discussions, but immediately with overwhelming force. The Krovar Empire was still reeling from their defeat at Kepler. Half their fleet had been destroyed, and their most experienced war master was dead. Other predator species watched nervously as humans established patrol routes through previously contested space, but not all the galaxy's response was fear. On the peaceful world of Altair Prime, the bird-like inhabitants were building a monument to human courage. The Altarians remembered how Captain Jin had stopped to help refugee ships even while racing to battle. That single act of kindness had saved thousands of lives. Similar monuments were being built on dozens of worlds. Species that had never heard of Earth 6 months ago now spoke the names of human heroes. Children from 100 different worlds learned about Captain Park's sacrifice and Major Hyun's rescue of the Volani scientists. In the Galactic Council chambers, the political landscape was shifting dramatically. For centuries, the Council had been dominated by species with large fleets and aggressive territorial policies. Peaceful races were given token representation, but no real power. Representative Quan of Earth addressed the Council for the first time, delivering a speech that would be remembered for generations. "Honorable delegates, humanity comes before you not as conquerors but as protectors. We offer our friendship to all peaceful species and our protection to those who cannot defend themselves. We ask nothing in return except the chance to build a galaxy where the strong serve the weak instead of preying upon them." The response was mixed. Aggressive species saw humanity as a threat to their expansion plans. But peaceful races began to hope for the first time in their history. The herbivorous Grakari sent secret messages asking for human protection from raiders. The aquatic dolphins of Procyon requested human patrols in their shipping lanes. Commander Day, the Volani communications officer who had sent the original distress call, was now working at the Kepler Defense Station. He had requested assignment to human forces and become Earth's first alien citizen. His job was monitoring space for other species in distress. "Commander, we have a situation developing in the Vega system," reported his human assistant. Day studied the incoming signals. A species called the Peaceful Builders was under attack by something called the Harvester Collective. The attackers were taking not just resources but entire populations for unknown purposes. "Priority 1 distress signal," Day declared. "Send it directly to Admiral Kang." This was the new reality the galaxy was learning to accept. Anywhere peaceful species called for help, human ships would appear. The Deathworlders had appointed themselves as the galaxy's protectors, and they took the job seriously. Captain Wu arrived at the Tau Ceti system to find slaver ships attacking mining colonies. The slavers expected to face local defense forces, with light weapons and poor training. Instead, they found human destroyers waiting for them. The battle lasted 23 minutes. When it was over, the slaver fleet was destroyed or surrendering unconditionally. The Zephyrian miners watched in amazement as human marines freed captured colonists and provided medical care to the wounded. "Why do you help us?" asked the Zephyrian colony leader. "What do you want in return?" Captain Wu looked out at the rescued. Miners rebuilding their homes. "We want a galaxy where people like you can live in peace. That's payment enough." News of the Tau Ceti rescue spread just as quickly as the Kepler victory had. The galaxy was starting to understand that humanity meant what they said. They really would protect anyone who asked for help. This realization caused a fundamental shift in galactic politics. Aggressive empires found their expansion plans blocked by human patrol fleets. Peaceful species began to trade and communicate more freely, knowing that protection was available if needed. But not everyone was happy with the new order. In the shadows of galactic civilization, darker forces began to plot. If the humans wanted to play protector to the weak, then perhaps it was time to test just how far they were willing to go. 6 months after the first distress call, Admiral Kang received intelligence that made his blood run cold. Something called the Devourers was moving through the Outer Rim territories. Entire star systems were going silent, their populations simply vanishing without a trace. "Sir, this is beyond anything we've faced before," his intelligence officer reported. "These aren't raiders or conquerors. They appear to be consuming entire civilizations." Kang studied the reports and made a decision that would define humanity's role in the galaxy forever. "Double our patrol schedules, triple our recruitment. If something out there is hunting intelligent species, then we're going to hunt it back." Doctor Yuna was working late in her laboratory when the emergency alert came through. She looked up to see human ships launching from the defense station, their engines burning bright against the stars. Another species had called for help, and the Deathworlders were answering. She thought about the scared Vellani scientists who had huddled in their shelter while their beautiful station burned. They had sent a desperate signal into space, not knowing if anyone would care enough to respond. The humans had cared. They had come across impossible distances to fight for people they had never met. They had lost ships and lives to protect strangers who could offer them nothing in return. Now they were doing it again, and again, and they would keep doing it for as long as someone needed help. The galaxy had learned a new truth. When peaceful species sent a distress signal, the Deathworlders came. And when Deathworlders arrived, the predators fled. But some predators did not flee. Some predators were too alien, too hungry, too different to understand fear. They were coming from the dark spaces between galaxies, and they saw all intelligent. Life as food. The humans would face them too, because that was what protectors did. Commander Day sat at his monitoring station, listening to the endless chatter of galactic communication. Somewhere in the vast dark between stars, another peaceful species might need help, and when they called, Earth would answer. The age of the Deathworld protectors had begun.